Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Crystal Cards. I'm Brian Mead, and today we are talking about Nordics. Now the thing is ever since I saw, Battle City back when Yugi was facing Kaiba and Merrick, I thought the Egyptian God cards were the absolute coolest. But the real Egyptian God cards, the ones that came out with the Game Boy game, let's face it, you're not allowed to play them in any real duel. They came out with some Egyptian God cards that were kind of tamer versions, but they really just aren't the powerhouse that the original copies were. But then we get to, after 5Ds, we had the Nordic monsters come out, and we have 3 Nordic gods, and I was like, here's a chance where I can actually play a deck that has 3 different gods all in it, and I don't have to worry about the gods being in my main deck, which are just going to clog up my hand. Now, before I get into this, I do want to just make sure it's understood that this is not a top tier deck. This is a fun deck, and so if you're playing against things like Windups and Zectors, Dragon Swarm all day long, you are probably going to lose those matchups, but that doesn't mean that you won't have the ability to summon out a big god against them, even against those decks. And if you're just playing a fun duel, this is a really fun deck to just throw in. So let's break it down a little bit, and this isn't an exact profile of how to build a Nordic deck. This is more of just what kind of goes into a Nordic deck, some good ideas. So here we go. Alright, so I wanted to build a deck that was going to use all 3 of the Nordic gods. I got them all here. This is Thor, Loki, Odin. They are all level 10. They got massive attack points, 4,000, 35, and 33. So when 33 is your smallest god, that's pretty sweet, and of course we're going to use all 3. So, let's break it down. First we're going to look at Thor, and Thor is going to be kind of the meat of the deck, and if I was going to try and take this into a more competitive nature, I'd probably narrow it down to just Thor and Odin. But I'm going to have to use my Guild Facts, of course, because this is a Nordic Beast Tuner, and it's really the only Nordic Beast Tuner, and Thor requires a Nordic Beast Tuner, so I'm going to need to run Guild Facts, and I really do recommend you run 3. The easiest way to get him onto the field is going to be my Black Goat, and he can be special summoned from your hand when your opponent destroys a monster by battle, so that's pretty easy. You can just pop him out, and you can switch him from defense mode to attack mode, and when you do that you can special summon a Nordic Beast from your deck, which means you can easily get to that tuner. And right there is a level 7, and if you have it normal summoned already, you can go after the White Goat. And the White Goat, if destroyed by battle, lets you special summon 2 tokens that are also Nordic Beasts, have 0 attack, 0 defense. And I recommend running 2 of the White Goat and 3 of the Black Goat. And then also, just to speed up this whole concept, I do recommend Super Nimble Mega Hamsters. Just a really good guy. You set him in defense mode. He gets flipped. You can go ahead, get that Black Goat and set it in face down defense. Then by flipping it face up, you go right into, once again, that Guild Facts, and then you can normal summon another one from your hand. Easy to get a level 10 that way. Okay, so that is how to get Thor. And Thor, right here, his effect says that once per turn you can negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent controls, so it's kind of like a skill drain, but it's not quite exactly like skill drain, because your opponent has like a face-down Raikou, for example, and Thor was to attack it. Raikou's effect would still go off because it wasn't face-up when Thor's effect when you used Thor's effect. So Raikou would destroy Thor, but that's not such a bad thing, because when Thor gets destroyed, by removing that Guild Facts we have in our graveyard from play, boom, banish it. We get to special summon our God card back, and that's going to deal 800 points of damage. So that's Thor. On to Loki. Now, Loki, if you're gonna want to use Loki, I recommend there's actually a couple different tuners you can use for Loki, but he's going to need a Nordic. It's so hard to see. All-Fire tuner. I recommend Mara. Mara lets you use monsters that are in your hand, Nordic monsters that are in your hand as the other part, so it's really easy to just normal summon him and use 2 that are in your hand to synchro summon for Loki. Some good choices for that. I like to use Tier of the Nordic Champions, which is level 4 light warrior, and she has 2000 tech, 2000 defense, but she gets destroyed if you don't have another Nordic out. So it is sometimes nice to just set her and let people run into her. I also like to use Grammar, which is a nice 1900 defense, so I don't have to get stuck with it in my hand. But these two light and darks, which go into a chaos built engine later too, are a real nice way to just synchro with him and go right into Loki. And Loki's the weakest of the 3 Nordic gods, but his effect lets you reuse your traps, which is kind of fun because in this deck I like to use a whole blend of traps. I'll use Threatening Roar sometimes. I can use Compulse. By reusing Solemn Judgment, I can get multiple big negations. Call the Haunted, of course, Torrential Tribute. Now this one is Garmer, or Glefnir, the Fetters of Fenrir, excuse me. And this lets you add 1 Nordic monster from your deck to your hand, so I just like to use this a lot, and I would run this probably at 3 if I was going to actually be trying to play this competitively. But this is just a really good bait card for those MSTs. So Loki also has an effect that lets you negate the effects of spell and trap cards during the battle phase, so you don't really have to worry about them mirror forcing you or anything, and he can just protect all your guys, and he's a lot of fun. So but he is the one that if I was going to try and play this competitively, I would be taking him probably out of my extra deck. And last, of course, we have Odin. Now, Odin's really awesome because he's got 4,000 attack, 3,500 defense, 10 stars, and he can actually protect himself from all spells and traps, which is cool. But he also, when he's destroyed, you can remove the Nordic Ascendant monster in order to special summon him, and when he's special summoned this way, you get to draw a card. But you're going to need a Nordic Ascendant in order to bring him out. So what do we use? Well, I like to use these. This is Valkyrie of the Nordic Ascendant, and when you summon her, if you don't control anything else, you can remove from play 2 Nordics in your hand, and that means that you can actually remove the tuners, because this deck has a ton of tuners in it. So by removing 2 Nordics in your hand, you can special summon 2 tokens that are both level 4. By synchro summoning with her, you can go ahead and special summon that Odin right out. And that means that she goes to the graveyard, which is great because she's the Ascendant that you want to remove. Now, even though I say that I like to use her, it doesn't mean that I don't like my Valkyries. And Vanadis here is a level 4, but what's really cool about Vanadis is Vanadis actually gives us the ability to pitch any Nordic monster we want straight to the graveyard in order to change her level to the level of the monster that we sent. She can also be used as any Nordic tuner. So if you are trying to play a deck that has Odin, Thor, and Loki in it, I do recommend running probably 2 of her. That's what I've got in here. And that will allow you the ability to just kind of switch amongst your different monsters that you're trying to get really easily. And she is an extra Nordic Ascendant, which means that you can remove her in order to get Odin. Now, there are some cool support ideas that I've seen out there. The first one I like is because we're using the Super Nimble Mega Hamster, we can go ahead and use Raikou. Super Nimble will let us, by flipping, put our Raikou from the deck face down. When Raikou gets flipped, not only do we get to destroy their monster, but we get to go ahead and mill a couple cards out, and who knows, maybe we get lucky, and that mills out a extra Nordic tuner, so we can remove it to keep our gods alive. Every deck pretty much out there, effect veilers. This is pretty much standard, at least 2. Bare minimum 2. In this I only run 2 because really there's so many tuners in here already that I'm just trying to limit. Sangan, Gores, these are also great cards to put in pretty much any deck. They're pretty much staples. And the Sangan can pretty much search out all the monsters in the deck. There are very few monsters in the deck Sangan can't search. because I'm using so many lights and darks, I do like to use my Blackluster Soldier Envoy at the beginning in here. He's just a really, good way to, he's almost a god card himself. And another one that I just like to, I've seen a couple people use is Red Nova Dragon, just because there's so many tuners to pump up his attack and get absolutely huge, just like Ken in the TG decks. And don't forget about your SpellTrap lineup. I do recommend that you run 3 Mystical Space Typhoons. Book of Moon is a really great card in here because you're running so many flip effects, so you can put your own monsters, back face down, get their flip effects again. Pot of Avarice is really great in here because you can recycle the Black Goats and the super nimble Mega Hamsters. And I do really like Burial from a Different Dimension in here just because it lets me put my different tuners back into the graveyard after I remove them for the gods, keep my gods alive a lot longer. Monster Reborn, of course, Heavy Storm, and Dark Hole. Those are all kind of staples. And of course, just to talk about some combos, like doing things with Vanadis, because we can change her level with anything that we pitch. If we are to send something that would change her level, it can make her level 3, which makes her really easy to overlay with. And of course, I am not running all of the Nordic monsters that are out there. These are some of the other ones that are out there that you can check out if you are more interested, including Svartef of the Nordic Alfar, which is a Nordic tuner, and it is level 5, which can give you some interesting plays if you like to run your level or rank 5 Xyz, and if you want to build a Loki specific deck, you probably want to run a couple of these. It can do some interesting things with this. So yeah. You might be saying to yourself, Brian, why aren't you running the Nordic Lights? Well, let me explain why I'm not running the field spell for the Nordic monsters at all. First of all, this field spell, it has an okay effect that makes your monsters indestructible as a result of battle, as long as it's face up on the field, your Nordic monsters anyways. But the problem with it is, as soon as this card goes from the field to the graveyard, it'll destroy every Nordic monster that you have out. Now, this will not hit your god cards, but it will hit all your other monsters that you're trying to use to summon your god cards. And with MST at 3, that means that a lot of times if you play this card, and if they realize what it does, they're going to MST it and wipe out all your monsters on your turn. That's terrible. You don't want that. So I do not recommend anyone use this card. Alright, so that's the Nordics. I do think everyone should try and play some fun decks, and this is a really fun deck. So I don't think there's any harm in picking up these cards. This isn't exactly the cheapest deck that I've ever built, even now. But most of the God cards have come drastically down in price. You can usually find any copy for $3 or less. Funny thing, interesting fact. Actually, the ultra-rare Odin is actually worth less than the ultra-rare Odin. Weird. Alright, so that's my show for the day, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Next week we're going to start diving into more of the nationals things. We gear up towards the national championships. We're going to start looking at some of the decks that we expect to see at the national championships, so get ready, because next week we're talking about Inzectors. That's right, Inzectors, that deck that you all hate. Alright, until next time, peace out guys, and happy dueling.